Exodus 15, 1 through 18. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him. My father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger. It consumed them like stubble. By the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The surging waters stood up like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy boasted, I will pursue, I will overtake them, I will divide the spoils, I will gorge myself on them, I will draw my sword and my hand will destroy them. But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders? You stretch out your right hand, and the earth swallows your enemies. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble. Anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on them. By the power of your arm, they will be as still as a stone until your people pass by, Lord, until the people you bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance. The place, Lord, you made for your dwelling. The sanctuary, Lord, your hands established. The Lord reigns forever and ever. So that is the Moses and the Israelites singing to the Lord. That's in Exodus 15. If you're joining me today, it is day 36. This is Exodus 13 to 15. And I just wanted to read that poem, that praise, that song, that psalm, whatever it is that you want to call it. It is to God. And then you're going to probably think to yourself, what on earth could make them sing so greatly? These are the people that not a chapter ago were begging Moses to just leave them alone, to let them stop, to just let them continue to be slaves in Egypt. And now they are singing to the Lord because of what he's done. Now, if you remember, we are doing, like I said, we're in Exodus 13 through 15. We are doing the chronological reading plan from the 1 year chronological Bible online. And we have met Moses, and we are really kind of heavy in the book of Exodus. And all these plagues have come, and all these plagues have destroyed a lot of Egypt. And this is in an effort so that God can show his glory, can show his greatness and his power and his majesty, and he can save his people and he can protect his people. He heard his people crying out to him, and he wants to glorify them. He wants to lift them out of slavery, and he wants to redeem them as a people. So buy them, purchase them as a people, and redeem them as his. And so some of the stuff that I can see in this is really powerful. So he has done all of these plagues, and Pharaoh has finally decided to let them go. Yet once he lets them go, and they decide they're going to do this Passover every year, and they're now leaving the land of Egypt. They've plundered the land of Egypt, right? They got all of Egypt's things, and so they're heading out. And Pharaoh, once again decides he doesn't want to let them go, even though his firstborn has died. And so he's just not ready to let them go. And so he pursues them. And these are just some of the really big areas that I think are important. One of the things that God does for his people is, if I go back to chapter 13, which is one of the places where we started today. 13:21, it says, by day, the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire. And I think I talked about this not that long ago, but God has really shown a lot of representation by fire. And this is one of the ways he's once again showing that he's, remember the burning bush? And then before the burning bush, he made that covenant with Abraham back in early in Genesis. And so it seems he seems to represent himself in fire. And so he's also spoken about the clouds and how he made and formed the clouds. We heard a lot about that in Job. And so he is clouds by day, which they can see, and he is fire by night to help them see. So he is leading the way. He's leading the charge for his people, and he's guiding them out of Egypt and into the land of milk and honey. So into the land of Canaan, where he has them. He's promised them the land. And so again, he's this cloud by day and fire by night. Then we move on, and he is getting ready. So this is the big one. This is the one that we hear about and see about and read about, and I've watched movies about. This is where he parts the Red Sea. And so he has once again hardened Pharaoh's heart in order to bring about, and it looks like this time too, he's hardened the official's heart. And it looks like this is again to have this great thing where he is actually going to unfortunately kill all the people. I say unfortunately because in my heart it pains me to know that anyone dies, but God is just, and so he does take the lives of the wicked when he chooses to punish the wicked. And so as much as it kind of hurts me, I think, oh, there are people too, and maybe not every single one of them was wicked, and I'm sure that's true. I'm sure not every single one of them was wicked, but they didn't believe and follow God. And they were against the Israelites. They were holding the Israelites in slavery. So they were a wicked people, and everyone chasing after them. Their hearts were hardened, and they wanted to follow the Israelites, and they wanted to get them. Well, they wanted to kill them at this point. They didn't even want to necessarily bring them back. They wanted to kill them. So Pharaoh was really frustrated. And so he follows them, and then God basically tells him to go through. So I want to read in chapter 14, 18. So it says the Egyptians will, so this is one of the reasons why he wants to do what he wants to do. He says, I will gain glory through Pharaoh. This is in 17. Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. And then it goes on in 19 to say, then the angel of God who had been traveling in front of Israel's army withdrew and went behind them. So moving on, it says the pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. So again, it's this idea of the angel of God, and then it's both angel of God and it's also God, right? So it says because God appears in the cloud and he appears in fire. And so he takes himself, the angel of God, and himself and the cloud and the fire, and he brings all of that back to protect him, or to protect, his son, the Israelites, from the warring people. So he's always protecting them. And I always just think that's interesting. And then verse 24, one of the ways that he protects them on top of it is during the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army. So somehow he's up in the pillar of fire and the cloud. And then it says he jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving. So there was no way that they were going. So at this point, he's raised everything up, right? So he's raised up all the water. He's made everything dry land. The Israelites have gone through, but there is no way he's going to allow the Egyptians to come through after. So again, going back to the beginning where I read that poem, that praise, God has done so much to protect these people. He is so worthy. He is so honorable of his covenant with us. And he always protects us. And so he's so worthy of this. And I think this poem in itself is something to be read over and over again. So we remember what he did. So he stuck these wheels in their tracks. The wheels wouldn't ride as quickly. And then what he says is dry ground. So the wheels should be able to go through, right? It's not like mud the water kind of dries out a little bit and it's a little muddy and gunky. It's not like that. It's the Israelites are able to pass right through it, but the Egyptians are not. And then I'm going to move right down to 31. And in 31, it says, when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and Moses, his servant. A great note for me, some of the things that I think about quite often. So they were Israelites. They were God's chosen people. But according to this, it's not until after they saw all this did they fear the Lord and put their trust in him and Moses. Now, did they already have trust in him and this was just a confirmation? I'm not 100% sure. This is always one of those areas where I just kind of I'm trying to work around what's being said so I can understand what's being said, and then that helps me with my own story. So he saw what happened. They saw all that. I mean, they have already seen all these other miraculous things happen, all these other plagues that happened. And yet this seems to be the big one that they were like, oh, now we have great fear of the Lord. You just pulled up all the water, you killed all of these people, and you saved us to protect us so we can get out of the land and go worship you as you asked us to do in the first place. And then they follow up with this amazing song to the Lord that I think is good for us to read over and over and over again. So, and then in verse 20, I think this is interesting. It says Miriam. So Miriam is the sister of Aaron and Moses, and it says she's a prophet. And so what she does is she takes a tambourine, and all the women follow her, and they are all dancing, and Miriam is singing. So Miriam says, sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. So she is pronouncing over and over again to all these people. So they're walking through the sea, right? So they've sort of like passed, and she's glorifying and reminding and prophesying about the Lord and what he has done for his people. I think it's the first time we've seen a woman as a prophet. All right, so then no sooner does this happen than we move on to verse 22. It says Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went to the desert of Shur for 3 days. Here we go, noting again certain times, dates, and things like that. 3 days. I feel like we've already seen that pretty often. The number 3, they traveled in the desert without finding water. Now, I don't want to make anything light about this. Going 3 days in the desert without water would be something close to torture. And they have caravans of millions of people, right? So it's 1 million plus, because it's, I think, at least 1 million men, and then counting all their wives and children. And so these people don't have water. And what do? They start grumbling against Moses right away. Moses gives them water. Well, God gives them water through Moses. So he gives Moses the power to clean up the water supply. And then verse 26, which is right near the end of this section, this is what I call an if-then statement. It is very hard to see an if-then statement, because I have, especially through a lot of these recordings, I have been saying over and over and over and over and over again, your actions don't matter. And of course I say that with because it's not that they don't matter, it's that they don't win you awards. We always have this idea that if I'm really good at swimming, then I will win the swimming contest and I will win an award. However, that is not how God works. But that doesn't mean that God doesn't want you to do anything. So he does. And he says in here, so here we go, verse 26. If, he said, because this is God, if you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. So he is making it abundantly clear. You need to follow the Lord and his decrees. You cannot just do what you want, when you want, how you want. You are following the Lord. You love the Lord, you trust the Lord, and therefore you are to follow the Lord. If you do that, then he will not bring these diseases on that he has brought to the Egyptians. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. That's where we end for today. I want you to really focus on that poem instead. So focusing on praise and remembrance and learning and understanding and knowing what God did. If this has been a blessing to you, I would like you to like it, to share it, to subscribe to the channel, as everything bangs around in my house, doors opening and closing. So like it, subscribe to the channel so these come to you constantly, so you're getting them every day. Share it with as many people as possible so we can get people reading the Bible. I don't care if you know the Lord. I don't care if you don't know the Lord at this point. I don't care if you believe in Jesus, if you believe in the one true God, or honestly, if you believe in karma, good goes, good comes back. I want you to read this Bible. There is power in the word of God. And who knows how God's going to work with that in your life. But the point is to read it. So I want you always reading it. And then you can join me and listen to all the goofball things that I say. And then you can, what in your own heart, what God has shared with you. And then it can be some back and forth if you want, or it can just be a listen for you to see what other people think in other situations. So like it, share it, subscribe it, find another person to read with. Keep reading your Bible. We're going to continue in Exodus tomorrow. See you then.